Hello everyone, we hope you are doing great. Welcome to this following session on grasp. Today we are providing you a new opportunity to grasp. When we speak about mother of all learning monuments, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT in United States of America, has always stood its ground over the ages to secure world rank 1 among all the universities. Making into MIT is a critical challenge for any student out there. But here with us today, we have a person who managed to crack the code and make his way into the gates of MIT, Mr. Anuj Apte. Anuj Apte completed his Bachelor of Science in Physics from MIT. Hailing from Nagpur, Anuj managed to crack all the competitive exams in the engineering and science field. Despite an option to take up IIT Bombay Computer Science, he chose to pursue his passion in art, physics in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, which itself is premier institute in the country. And he went on to apply later on to secure a spot in MIT. Anuj Apte has won silver medal in International Physics Olympiad for India during his 12th grade and gold medal in Asian Olympiad. He is currently pursuing his PhD in University of Chicago in the field of physics with Yoichiro Nambo Fellowship, a fellowship awarded to a top-rated applicant in the incoming class with full funding of 3 years and no teaching responsibility. So let's welcome Anuj Apte on our platform. Hi Anuj, how are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me. Thanks for the great introduction.
So how are things on your end so far?
Pretty good, pretty good. Busy, but good.
So in this particular talk, we are going to speak about humanities in MIT. And this is based on a request from one of our humanities instructor in Indian Institute of Science, Uday Balakrishnan. He basically took introduction of governance to us. And in this course, once we entered and once we exited, we or most of us were in half a mind to switch from science to civil service. It was a fantastic course. So definitely we would also like to know more about humanities, how humanities has been in MIT, and how you guys kind of enjoyed it. And I would
Yeah, so I definitely used the opportunity to the fullest extent possible since I had one of my majors was a philosophy. So and I had a minor in music, so I took a lot of music and philosophy classes while I was at MIT. It was a very interesting learning experience. Especially, I really enjoyed my philosophy classes. I was already interested in it in high school, just reading books, but um, MIT allowed you to engage in a lot of really good humanities education, which it could involve like economics or archaeology, history, literature, philosophy, music. There's also visual art, photography. So there was definitely a very wide breadth of classes that were available, and these two subjects spoke to me, and I was very interested in them, and that's how for example, with music, I really liked listening to music, but I wasn't serious about pursuing it as an educational endeavor. And when I was a junior, which is like the third year, I became very interested because I went to some really awesome concerts, and I wanted to just think about or like how are these people making great music that you could like make you feel all these emotions. How do they manage to actually do it? That you like scribble some things and somebody else plays what is scribbled and then like people feel sad. How is that happening? And I wanted to understand that process better and take part in it. And it was great for someone like me who had never like read Western music or who didn't even know like how the piano keys work, to go from that to like writing my own string quartet within 2 years. Like you could write a piece that lasts like 8 minutes, and like you could actually play it to your friends and be proud of something that you've made. And from not knowing absolutely anything, which is pretty crazy, that you could go such a distance because you had really good instructors that helped you all along.
so you clearly you're telling that you enjoyed humanities a lot in MIT. And what and all courses in humanities exist in MIT, and what do you think needs to be added?
So I think a very popular one is economics because for obvious reasons, many people enjoy the theory of economics. It's very mathematical in nature compared to something like music, which is not. So it's a very popular major because many people at MIT are good at math. There's definitely less emphasis on literature, for example, and language courses are a bit of a sore point. So many people who want to learn a language have to sometimes go to take classes at Harvard because Harvard has many more language classes. So I knew many people who would go to, like, let's say, learn Hindi or Sanskrit or other Cyrillic languages, which weren't being offered at MIT, and they would go to Harvard to take them. But it was great in the sense that you could always do that if you were interested enough in the subject.
You mean to say the international students went to learn Hindi?
I mean, some people, some Indian American students who never really formally learned Hindi were interested in like actually learning, let's say, their mother tongue, or they wanted to read, write, which is more difficult than just speaking it.
So, does humanities in your MIT provide you space to learn theater and folk art and all these kind of?
Yeah, there was a major called theater performance. So you could, and there was also a minor, and there were just classes being offered. So I took one of the classes, was Introduction to Acting. And it really put into perspective how you vocalize and how you can emphasize words. So many of the things were about speech and partly about gestures. So how do you stress certain words versus not stressing others and things like that, which you don't really are very conscious of while you speak to your friends. But if you are speaking in public, for example, it could be something that you have to be very cognizant of.
So, what and all humanities courses are there which are related to the governance and international policies and something which falls on these lines?
One of
And
the
how it is
majors,
pursued by the students?
yeah. So one of the majors there is a political science, and MIT has a very strong political science program. So there are people who focus on international relations, on negotiations. How do you negotiate or broker a treaty between countries? There's also classes on economics, which are very much focused on governmental economics and economics of institutions. Like one of the people, he became very famous recently, is Abhijit Banerjee, who has focused a lot on studying which policies help the poor and which ones don't work as well, for example. So you could take a class with a Nobel Prize winning economist who's thought a lot about how do you help poor people, for example, if you're interested in governance more generally.
And coming to our next question, uh, why do you think humanities is important for a scientist?
I mean, I wouldn't say a blanket statement such that it is important, but many people are already interested in it, in some aspects of humanities, and giving them an avenue to actually study it more carefully with people who are very knowledgeable and professors is a very good way to develop other ways of engaging with the world. Because most of the time, you are not like solving equations, you're speaking, you're writing, you're listening, and these faculties are harder to develop via the sciences. And there's quite a lot of beauty to be found in art, for example, and just sort of being able to appreciate what goes into making it makes you more aware of all the opportunities around you. For example, like if you like read a poem, it's a different way of engaging with the world versus like reading a textbook on mathematics, for example, which could be beautiful in its own way, but it just allows you to tap into a greater part of like the world that you wouldn't have access to otherwise.
And though you interacted with the ISC Humanities course very short time, I guess you can recall very small details of it. So, how do you think ISC program can improve in its humanities course?
Yeah, at least the way I had exposure to it, it seemed like it was just a peppering of random collection of courses. And there wasn't like, let's say, if you were very interested in governance, you couldn't take 5 classes and like get your knowledge to a level where it's actually something you can like contribute to it. Like I can totally see someone Like, for example, as I gave you the example of a music major, right? You could write actual music after you take like 8 classes in music, which you can't if you just saw one course. Which is, if someone is actually interested, having the opportunity to engage it in a deep manner, where you sit down and write music every day, or you could like write a philosophy paper after finishing a philosophy degree, or you could contribute to an economics research project, versus I just give you a random mismatch of courses. Let's say you become very interested in visual art after you took a art history course, but there's no other way. There's no other avenue after that, right? The professor disappears because they are a visiting faculty member who is just gone. So there's nowhere, like there's no way to feed the curiosity anymore once the person is gone, once the resources aren't available anymore. Versus here you have actual full-time faculty members. So it's very hard to have that sort of atmosphere in universities outside of the US. It's very few schools outside the US manage to have such a breadth of courses while also having letting people have access to them for an extended amount of time, which is necessary to engage deeply with any subject matter.
So you have in the previous discussions we had also, you said you have enjoyed humanities very well in MIT. So any new life-changing perspective you have got from humanities, like philosophy classes and stuff, which you would like to share? And is there anything which you learned which actually helped you toggle with the intensive coursework you had with somewhat to a required extent of peace of mind?
Yeah, so I think especially for the philosophy major, it sort of teaches you how to think critically and like examine every assumption in a way that might be even unsettling to many people. Like many people take like social truths for granted and they live their lives unconditionally without thinking, ever reflecting about like why certain things we do those things. And it's not just small decisions whether to buy this kind of ice cream or that kind of ice cream. But for example, a very commonly accepted truth would be something like, if you make a lot of money you will be happy. But people don't actually bother to like study the basics of like, is this thing actually empirically true at all. It sort of makes you very skeptical about claims that people make, especially when they turn on empirical facts, and it sort of makes you question the assumptions on which both society functions and you live your life with. And for example, like consider a simple example of like a soldier who has been taught by either propaganda or teaching to like die for his country. Sure, I mean, he goes, he fights some other country and he dies. But what did he get out of it? Nothing, right? Like he suffered in the cold and he died. But because he's being raised, praised as a martyr, more people are likely to engage in this behavior in the future while disregarding their own well-being, right? The wants of the society are directly in conflict with your own wants, which is presumably to live your life and not die while suffering in the cold. So you have to change how people think. So society is actively engaging in changing how you might think naively. Like if you go to a random hunter gatherer or some person and you told them, hey, here is this guy sitting 500 kilometers away from you making a decision on whether you will live or die, would you follow the orders? He'll most likely say no, because it makes no sense if you like think about it from a very simple minded perspective. It's only when like it's drilled to you since you're a child. You wake up every day and you sing the national anthem. So it sort of becomes inculcated in you. And like you start exposing these sort of ideas, you start questioning these ideas. And it changes even how you approach like a specific subject. So like if you're doing physics or something, you can like think more carefully about, oh, I'm setting this experiment up, what is it relying on, what are my presuppositions, how can I either prove them or disprove them, or how can they change, for example, with time.
Well, that's really a reflex which all of us need to inculcate in our life. And yeah, like you mentioned earlier, that current notion of get making more money provides you with happiness is something which is taken up seriously by a lot of people, and over a period of time it is coming at the cost of their health, their family well-being, a lot of things. So these kind of teachings has to be inculcated not just in the undergrad courses but also from the very early stage of life, because that's when your controlling idea starts molding, right? And in my case, I was very fortunate because I studied in TVS school where all these things were already present from very young age. And we had a very good number of teachers who used to uh, speak about all these things, and we had a clear idea of how to navigate despite having challenges, and upfront how to keep our mindset in such a way that we don't really back out. Just try find out something optimistic and navigate through. And definitely, and one more coming to our last question. Humanities is usually pursued in two different ways in any universities. For one set of people, it is something where humanities is pretty much like a sub is more like a life where they can go and see through their eyes, take in a lot of information and build their concepts and thinking around it. And for some people, it's pretty much like a great scoring subject where they can just improve their credit scores. So what is your say about it? One thing, how is it generally pursued in MIT? And moreover, do you think when it falls to the second part where people just want to rush it with marks and stuff, do you think it's the failure of the institution to achieve the quality, or is it something like it's the failure of our education system in the past to just make student think only on the competitive edge? What is
Yeah,
your
I
say about it?
definitely think that many students um, would think that like humanities classes tended to be easier because quite often, for example, if it's a theater class, if you show up every day, you would get a good grade because like there's no way to like specifically judge how good a person is versus like picking questions where like if the answer is 30 and you say it's 20, you'd get a zero. Uh, so they're definitely graded easily, but I think the intention was never to like use them as a very strong way to grade students. They're always sort of implicit knowledge was that it was a way for them to showcase and get students interested in other things. It was more so about displaying the beauty of like other ways of knowing and exemplifying other ways of other forms of knowledge versus making it into a thing where most people had their own majors which were technical and they would occasionally engage in humanities for like personal gratification, and also it was a requirement to take some classes. So many people took them because they were required, and I would say it's very hard to structure courses so that people get a lot out of it. Like were many people who would just like put in the bare minimum because it was a required class and they didn't care about humanities at all. But I would say a very decent chunk did manage to get a lot out of it. And I think it's very hard to design it in such a manner that everybody will get something out of it and not just focus on it as an easy class. It might be a very difficult problem actually that I don't think any institution has managed to solve to this day. So it's a very ambitious task.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Anuj, it was really an insightful session. Thanks a lot for this discussion, and I'm very sure most of us will be happy to watch this video and take in a lot from this. So, by saying this, we are concluding. And to the audience, thanks a lot for watching this video. We are looking forward for more such engagements. Please like, share, and subscribe our channel. Thank you, and thank you for being on our platform.
Thanks for inviting me.